winter! Welcome to Christy Grey Scarlet Pen. So, I have, hopefully before this video comes out, posted, realized that I have, just been buying a lot of books in the last year or so, and forgotten a lot of the books that were already on my shelves for just such a long time. And so I did a fantasy challenge where I pulled out some of the fantasy books that have been there the absolute longest, Christian fantasy, on my shelves, and I am currently going through them now. So fun fact, I'm actually doing both of these videos at the same time, in real time, because I've felt really slumpy, reading slumpy wise, and so I thought I could read two different genres at once, and hopefully that means that I won't fall into a slump.
No! God, please, no! No! No!
Today though, this is the video where I am going through and reading the suspense crime books that have been on my shelves the longest. And I picked, this video is the Christian suspense crime books. A lot of what I've noticed is that when it comes to like Christian suspense, it's always like Christian romantic suspense for some reason. Like there's always that like underlying subplot of romance that happens, which I don't have a problem with this. I like that, it's fun. Alright, so I have picked 5 or 6 Christian romantic suspense or Christian suspense books, I guess, crime, whatever, it falls under that genre, yeah, we're reading them, and as per the exact same situation with the fantasy books, I have already read the first one. So here we go, we're actually starting off this video with an opinion. First book that I read was Dark Deception by Nancy Mell, is how I'm going to say that. So, Dark Deception. So, it's in the title, Dark Deception. However, so this book is about Kate. She is a woman who, when she was college age, her twin sister got killed in front of her, and she was almost killed as well by a serial killer. And then years later, he is finally, they're going through the trial, and she testifies against him, all that kind of jazz. But then, for under technicalities and whatever, he ends up getting released, and so she's under witness protection. And the U.S. Marshal, I think he's a U.S. Marshal, some sort of cop person anyway, who was with her all throughout the trial and whatever, like was her like safe person, he has to go back and get her again because they're like, well, we're either going to retry him, there's something going on, he's back, so now he's going to pull her from witness protection to come and, deal with all of that stuff that's going on. So that's like the base understanding that I had of this book. I really wish that this book had listed triggers, because if I knew the triggers that were in this book, I absolutely would never have picked it up and read it. Not in a million years. Like, I know the title is Dark Deception, but like, no. So like trigger warnings, I'll put trigger warnings somewhere because I was not expecting the content warnings for this book. So here's the deal. I hated this book. So I've read another Nancy book before, and that book was pretty intense as well, but the character had a specific, thing about her that made it feel, oh, that's why it's so intense. So I was like, okay, it's just that character, it's just that book. No, it is Nancy. I think she just seems to write really intense stories and really intense books and characters and whatever. So first of all, it was super, like, way darker than I was expecting. Again, those content warnings, like, that just took me by surprise and just horrendous for me. But also this story was so convoluted and so ridiculous. I won't give spoilers in case you want to go and read this book, but like, this was the most convoluted plot, and even at the end, someone in the book says, oh, that sounds convoluted, isn't it? Yes, it is. It's so unbelievably, unnecessarily complex. Nancy, why? Why? It was so unnecessary. So this plot was so ridiculous. There is so many like aliases and names and like people and, and it's all just, it's this person, no it's not, it's that person, or maybe it is that person after all. Like, it just, oh, there's all this stuff happening and there's all these people and it's just all this, like, no. Like, a story can be interesting and can have lots of twists and turns. That's fine. That's great, actually. It's great to have twists and turns in a book. This was not that. This was not like, oh, some cool twists and turns. No, this was literally just throw out all of the ideas that you ever had for a book ever in your life, and let's just like see what sticks to the wall. And apparently everything stuck to the wall, and everything was the answer, and like No, so I just didn't like that. It was so unnecessarily complicated and so convoluted. So apart from being like super dark and loads of trigger warnings, please be careful if you're going to pick this book up. So many trigger warnings. It was unbelievable. I just didn't enjoy this at all. Like, Nancy has a relatively nice prose and, good writing, but just no for so many reasons, just no. So absolutely not. I did not enjoy it. 2 stars. I'm never going to read this again, and I'm going to unhaul it, which honestly, it's kind of surprising because a lot of Christian fiction, sometimes it can go really dark and it can go into really interesting places, but like, it was different. I don't know, it was different, and it was just not enjoyable. Just at all. Okay, so the next book that I'm going to read, this book has been on my shelf for so long, and unless I force myself, I'm just probably never going to pick this up and read it out of interest, so that's why it's in this video, so I'm going to try and force myself to actually get through at least a solid portion of it. But it is called End of the Roadie, and it is by Elizabeth Flynn, so it's a mystery for D.I. Costello. So, like, I think Detective Inspector is usually UK. Basically, the storyline is that... Oh gosh. I'm running out of breath. The story is about a musician who's really like known for having loud and, obnoxious things happen in his shows, and everyone just thinks it's part of the show. However, during his performance, one of his roadies is killed by a gunshot, but everyone again thinks it's just the show until they get backstage. And so the longtime roadie has been killed, and the Detective Inspector Costello has to come and figure out who is the killer. Apparently there was a shadowy figure who was stalking the dead man, so like for me stalking is like a little bit dicey. There's a line I don't like, so we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see what happens. But that is the next book on the list, and even if I only get through some of it and I just give up, it'll finally be off my list, so that's nice. I might end up liking it, it might surprise me, who knows. Let's find out. I will be reading it, and I'll come back and give you an update, either when I'm finished or when I'm partway through. Whatever. Whatever happens, happens. Anyway. Whatever. Hi! Hello. So, originally when I filmed this, I had a different book in mind, but I swapped to this particular book, and so I've already read it. So here we go. The next book that I've read in the crime suspense, Christian suspense books that I had in my bookcase is No One to Trust by Lynette Eason. Ordinarily, I love Lynette Eason, so I was really excited for this book. So let me tell you all about what it's about. So Summer wakes up one morning and finds out that her husband is missing and that he wasn't who she thought he was, and there are now, bad guys who are after him, and she finds out that there is, the search for her husband and answers takes Summer ever deeper into a world of organized crime where people are used one moment and discarded the next. And so it's sort of about Summer figuring out that actually her husband is not who she thought he was, and trying to figure out what the heck is going on, like, in his world. And, it's a suspense book, it's like a drama, like, crime, whatever, so there's danger and immediate danger and whatever. So, I've just read it. What do I say about this? Okay, so, like I said before, I normally like Lynette Eason actually quite a bit. There are a few books of hers that are in my bookcase, and so I was, like, pretty excited for this. I pushed it to the top of my list because I was pretty excited to read it. Yeah, I hated this book. Proof that you don't always enjoy every single book from every single author. Even though you like the author on the whole, sometimes there's a book that is an outlier, or there are a few books that are outliers. This happened to me recently. I read a book by Terry Blackstock. Ordinarily, I quite like Terry Blackstock, but this particular book was a fail for me. It was called Cape Refuge, in case you wanted to know. But this book was not it for me at all. It just did not win. None of the characters were likable. The main character, Summer, well, one of the main characters. So Summer and her husband, Kyle Abernathy, is the man she married. But Summer is so unlikable. Her reactions to what is happening are so over the top ridiculous. She is so dramatic about it and absolutely overreacts to everything. Literally everything. Complete overreactions. And that makes her super unlikable. She's so angry and so, like, her reactions are just so over the top ridiculous. I can't actually, like, I don't like her. I don't like her. She's awful. She's whiny and mean and stupid, and like, I just don't like it. And then you have Kyle as well, who he's a bit of a dick. And let's not beat around the bush about it. He's not likable either, and lied to this person for goodness knows how long, and he's not a nice guy. Like, I don't like him at all either. And you know, you're following with, you know, the police officers and stuff as well. Didn't like any of them. I didn't like anybody in this book. None. I had absolutely no emotional connections to anyone. Everybody was awful. Everybody was wrong. Everyone was stupid. So it makes it really difficult to follow along with the book when you can't root for any of the characters whatsoever. People were overreacting all over the joint for no good reason. People were like, you know, losing. This book frustrated me to no end. I just think that the way it was written was kind of like the cheesy lines, the dialogue, the way it was written was just low standard compared to other stuff I've read of hers, and of a lot of people's, and it just wasn't the ideal book for me. Like some of the cheesy stuff in here, I'm like, really? That's what you're going with? Or like the plot lines that we went with, I was like, really? That's your choice? That's where you wanted to go with this plot? I just wasn't believing it. I wasn't connecting with it, and I just couldn't buy into the narrative or the characters. So big fat fail from me. I think I gave it something like 2.5 stars, maybe 2.75, but honestly, it was a fail, and it's disappointing to say, but it is what it is. Okay, so I'm not having much luck at the moment with this video, which is sad. These books that I've been pulling out of my bookcase are not winning. However, I'm hoping this next one will be a winner. I've actually been excited to read this for a long time, and it is Seconds to Live by Susan Sleeman. So this book I'm actually excited for. Those are the other books that I've read so far for this video were ones that I bought specifically for researching certain types of characters and certain plot lines, and so I'm almost not surprised necessarily that they didn't work out, because I didn't pick it because I wanted to. I picked it because it was relevant to what I was going to write. So this one, though, I've picked because I actually liked the idea of the story. So hopefully this will get a bit of a better chance of liking it. So the story is about cyber criminals who are hacking into the witness protection database and auctioning off witnesses' personal details to the highest bidder. There is a red team, which is led by FBI agent Sean Nichols, and they are in a chase to find the hacker. And so before they can continue to release names of WITSEC people. There is also a witness to potentially catch this hacker and all the bad guys, but she is not super cooperative, and so of course there's some tension there and there's some stuff going on. So that is what this book is about. It is a Homeland Heroes book 1. I do remember seeing the other books in the series. I couldn't tell you what they were, but it could be really fun. I'm actually kind of excited for this one, to be honest with you. It sounded really good, really interesting. I'm hoping this book is the winner in this video, because so far we're getting a lot of fails. So let's see how it goes. We are finally going to round out this video. I have read the last few books that was on this list, I suppose. I've been sick, so I haven't filmed exactly after the books that I've done, but don't worry, because we're planning to get through this relatively quickly. So here's the final 3 books that I have tried to read for this video. So Seconds to Live by Susan Sleeman was the one that I think I left off with you guys, and I have read this book. So this one has me of 2 minds. I'm sort of it's a relatively standard, you know, crime, suspense, whatever book. Pretty standard, pretty normal, like, you know, pretty good, pretty average, right? And, you know, it was relatively interesting plot. The characters were okay. You know, I like the kind of the dynamic. I suppose you could say friends to lovers, but like they've never met in person, and then all of a sudden they meet and they're going to work together in this, you know, high stakes situation. So that was really interesting to read. What wasn't interesting was the way that the author went about sharing certain information. So these characters are in law enforcement, they're in high stakes law enforcement, witness protection, And so there's a lot of stuff that they're going to know that we don't know. Cybersecurity, like, you know, potentially you're not going to know that information. So you've got to be able to portray it somehow. However, whenever Susan explained things like this, it was a sea of technobabble that almost didn't actually matter. Or it was a character so frustrated they even had to deign to explain something to the person who was asking them, that when I was reading it, and if I had a question or I wasn't sure about a topic or something like that, instead of just hoping the author would either tell me or I could just go research it myself, it was given to me in such a way that made me feel stupid for even wondering that question. Not ideal. Also, the characters way overreacted about everything. I don't know, that's a theme that I've discovered. Like, everybody overreacts about everything in these books. There was twins, of course there was, because this video is littered with twins. For some reason, I just randomly ended up buying a whole ton of books about twins. I don't know why, don't ask me, I have no clue. Everything has been twins for some reason. But, you know, set of twins, whatever. All the characters just overreacted about pretty much everything. I don't understand why people had the attitudes they had in this book, and I'm just, you know, it was relatively standard. One thing I did like that I thought was really good was the way that Faith was really, like, seamlessly weaved throughout the story. It wasn't something where it was like, you know, this character needs a come to Jesus moment and whatever. It was just more that they're just living with their faith, and that's just their reality, and that's just how they go about their lives. And it wasn't like, you need to come to Jesus. Some books do that, and it's a bit off-putting. Even for a Christian, it's like, okay, calm down. But this one was really good. It was just like, genuinely, that is just part of their lives and how they live, and that was really nice. I appreciated that. The actual plot and story itself, relatively interesting. You know, it was relatively interesting. I kind of liked it. You know, I liked the end and how everything got wrapped up. I thought that was really nice. So, you know, relatively solidly average. 3 stars, I think, is what I gave it in the end, but I had some problems with this book, I'm not gonna lie. Not enough to get rid of it. I actually kind of liked it, so it was pretty good. Will I continue? It's book 1. Will I continue in the series? No. No, I won't. But, you know, relatively solid read. Next book that I picked up and tried to read was The Last Plea Bargain by Randy Singer. So this book was actually a present a really long time ago. It is one of the oldest books that I've got on my shelf in terms of how long ago since I got it. And I made it to about page 80, 100, and then I decided to just to skip to the end to find out what happened, you know, and sort of have some final wrap-ups and stuff. Honestly, this book frustrated me a lot. It's why I ended up just sort of skipping majority of the middle. I think there's 400 pages and I only made it to page 100, so, you know, although I did read the last few chapters because I wanted to sort of just get the gist of the end. This book is about a defense attorney who just does not make plea bargains with criminals. She absolutely refuses to make plea bargains, and she's, you know, but she's still a prosecutor, so like she wants to get justice for victims. And then you also have a very famous defense attorney who is just been indicted for his wife's murder, and then all of a sudden, you know, criminals stop taking plea bargains, which throws the city into chaos, and everything is a little bit, you know, chaotic and crazy, and there's all this stuff going on. That is how it was marketed. That's basically what the blurb says. This book is just sort of that, but way more than that. Like, this is a Christian fiction book, okay? But can I just say, this really felt like, so I know I only read the first 100 pages, but from what I read, it really just felt like a Christian who was for the death penalty, who was trying to explain why it's okay to be for the death penalty. Regardless of your opinion about that, this book was literally like making us feel bad that someone on death row doesn't actually get killed. And I'm like, guys, like, as a Christian, I'm not for the death penalty. And as a Christian, I don't understand Christians who say they are for killing somebody. Just because you've got permission from the government does not make it any less of a murder. I'm sorry, that's just my view on things. And so, like, if you're for the death penalty, go ahead, like, live your life, whatever, I don't care. But for me, that is not a Christian mindset whatsoever. And so, I know there are Christians who are going to disagree with that, who are going to be for the death penalty and all that kind of stuff. That's fine, but I don't need a book to try and come at this from a Christian perspective and say, this is why it's okay to be okay with the death penalty. No, no, I'm not okay with it, and that really irritated me because it just felt like propaganda being thrown in my face all the time, and I was like, no, absolutely not, you will never change my mind. So that was irritating. There was an entire storyline about, you know, an inmate going on death row for the murder of the main character, the prosecutor for her mum or something like that. And, you know, this lawyer is connected to that case, so when she ends up prosecuting him for his wife's murder, he's claiming innocence and she ends up prosecuting him, and so of course she goes hardcore for him because he was linked to the person who killed her mum, and she's clearly not gotten over that. And there was just so much in this book that was problematic for me. I get that not all lawyers are honest. I get that not all situations are going to end up actually having justice with, you know, in the end, because unfortunately that's just the world we live in. We aim for justice, we don't always get it. But this book was just really not it for me. There was too many storylines that I was trying to be involved in, too many characters and storylines that tried to link together, and technically they do link together. If you want to follow the threads, like I said before, like, you know, this person that she's prosecuting was the defense attorney for that guy who now has another lawyer who is linked to something else, and you're like, it just, the web of connections is just, some of it's really thin and some of it's like, okay, well, we went on this tangent about a death penalty inmate for no purpose in the story except to give the main character angst and a frustration. Like, I was just watching something the other day and it was saying that, you know, some of the characters we see on TV, their entire personality is just their trauma. And that's not interesting. It's not interesting to read or watch about, like, your entire personality is your trauma. Like, it's boring and stupid. So I didn't make it technically all the way through. Like, I skipped a large portion of that book, but, you know, them's the breaks. I did not like that book. I think I gave it 2 stars. So, the last book for this video, and I can finally wrap things up, which is exciting, is End of the Roadie, and that is by Elizabeth Flynn. So I did talk about this book and then put it aside. So here I am all the way at the end, finally revealing that I did actually try to read this. And when I say try, I mean try, because I made it only about 50 pages in before I gave up for this book. I was not feeling it. I thought the musical element, a roadie who, you know, dies in the middle of a musician's performance, sounded really interesting. It wasn't. I was bored. I was frustrated. I just couldn't be bothered. I wasn't getting into it. And instead of trying to torture myself for the sake of just finishing this book, I just DNF'd it. I did try to skip to the end and figure out who the killer was, but because I wasn't really connected to any of the characters and didn't remember any of their names, it didn't mean anything to me. So, yeah. It just wasn't for me. I didn't even put this as read because I was like, no, I completely DNF'd this book. Absolutely not for me, so no point wasting my life. Well, that's that. Them's what I got. It was a fun experiment, but I will say that at the moment, I am not in the mood for crime or suspense books. Right now, I'm really feeling more fantasy driven. So check out the fantasy video that I did, the version of that I did for this, you know, reading the really old fantasy on my shelves, because I had, you know, I had varied success for that, but it was kind of more fun because I'm just in a more fantasy mood. So I'm gonna go off and read another fantasy, although I am also reading celeb bios at the moment, which is very unusual for me, so that is fun as well. But, you know, thanks for watching, thanks for getting this far. If you did get this far, thank you. I hopefully will have another fun video for you later, so see you guys in the adventures.